A father climbs a mountain at dawn, holding his son's hand tightly. The air hangs heavy with unspoken tension. Silence envelops the scene, broken only by the faint sounds of footsteps on rocky ground. Suddenly, a knife is drawn, gleaming sharply in the morning light. The son lies bound on the altar, vulnerable and still. Then, an abrupt halt. A ram is discovered, caught by its horns in a nearby thicket. This pivotal moment changed history forever. It represents the ultimate test of faith and obedience. Skeptics dismiss it as myth or cruelty, yet archaeological and cultural evidence reveals a foundation in ancient Near Eastern rituals while conveying a message utterly unique. So, what does Abraham's test truly reveal about God's nature and the roots of faith itself? This story, preserved across millennia, continues to challenge and inspire countless believers and scholars alike. It pushes us to confront questions about trust, sacrifice, and divine purpose. Its power lies not only in the drama of the moment, but in its lasting theological implications, serving as a touchstone for understanding the nature of God's relationship with humanity. To ensure full transparency, please note that this video uses AI-generated visuals to bring history to life. Faith and Facts: Where Ancient Mysteries Meet Modern Exploration. Thesis: Genesis 22's account of Abraham's testing remains one of the most debated narratives in the Bible. Skeptics often argue that it promotes blind obedience or reflects later theological editing. However, the vivid details in the story closely mirror ancient Near Eastern sacrificial customs while introducing profound theological innovation. This test serves both as a rite of passage for Abraham and a reaffirmation of God's covenant. Archaeological discoveries of sacrificial altars, ritual practices, and offering animals provide tangible insights into the narrative's historicity. Tonight, we focus on one particular ritual element: the ram caught in the thicket, which holds deep symbolic significance across Bronze Age cultures. This key detail unlocks a richer understanding of the story's uniqueness and enduring impact, challenging conventional skepticism and inviting viewers to deepen their appreciation of Abraham's faith journey. Understanding this narrative requires not only a study of its theological message, but also an appreciation for its historical and cultural backdrop. By situating Abraham's test within the broader ancient Near Eastern sacrificial milieu, we gain new insight into how this story both conforms to and transcends its cultural environment. This duality underscores its role as a foundational moment in biblical history. The skeptics claim: skeptics frequently describe Abraham's test as a troubling, even cruel story, crafted to promote unquestioning obedience or to justify later sacrificial rituals. They suggest it echoes common mythological motifs of child sacrifice reworked for theological purposes. However, such critiques often neglect the broader cultural context of the ancient Near East, where sacrifice was a solemn religious and social act, one governed by complex laws, prohibitions, and symbolism. Excavations at sites like Tel Arad and Megiddo have uncovered remarkably well-preserved Bronze Age altars that reveal clear evidence of animal, not human, sacrifice. Furthermore, inscriptions and texts from Ugarit and Mari document sacrificial rituals that include substitutionary offerings, a practice vividly reflected in Genesis 22's ram substitute. The story itself aligns with a familiar motif in Near Eastern literature: a deity testing a human's faithfulness, withholding the sacrifice at the crucial moment. This cultural framework places Genesis 22 firmly within its historical milieu, while its ethical and theological dimensions distinguish it from surrounding narratives. Moreover, many skeptics overlook how Genesis intentionally reframes these cultural elements, not merely adopting them, but redefining their meaning. Instead of endorsing human sacrifice, the narrative condemns it through divine intervention, offering a profound ethical critique that sets Israelite faith apart from its neighbors. This redefinition adds layers of meaning that many critics fail to fully appreciate. The concept of divine testing was widespread in the ancient world, Yet Genesis presents it uniquely as a test of trust and obedience that explicitly rejects human sacrifice. This distinction was revolutionary for its time. Many surrounding cultures either practiced or feared child sacrifice. But the Israelite narrative condemns it through the act of substitution. Archaeological evidence corroborates this, showing that altars used for animal sacrifice were central to communal worship, whereas ritual human sacrifice was exceedingly rare and often forbidden by law. Genesis emphasizes God's direct intervention and provision, the divine hand that stops a sacrifice just in time. The ram caught in the thicket is far from incidental. It fulfills the role of a substitute, a concept foundational to Israelite sacrificial theology. Additionally, placing the test on Mount Moriah, later identified with the Temple Mount, connects the story to Israel's ongoing worship practices and covenant identity. This geographic detail signals the story's foundational role in shaping Israel's faith. Abraham's unwavering faith under testing is presented not as blind obedience, but as trust rooted in a deep relationship with God. This psychological complexity stands in stark contrast to the simplistic notion of obedience often attributed by critics. Instead, it models a faith that wrestles with divine command, demonstrating profound courage and commitment. The narrative also challenges readers to consider the nature of divine demands and human response. Abraham's willingness to obey reflects a radical trust in God's goodness and faithfulness, even when the command defies natural understanding. This dynamic invites us to reflect on the tension between obedience and faith that continues to resonate in religious life today. Core evidence. Picture the scene in vivid detail. A rough-hewn stone altar perched atop a mountain ridge, smoke curling upward from burning wood. Abraham carefully binds his son with gentle hands, while the knife catches the early sun's rays, poised for sacrifice. Suddenly, a rustling in the nearby bushes interrupts the moment. A ram, caught by its horns in a dense thicket, emerges as the divinely appointed substitute. Archaeological digs have unearthed altars that closely resemble the biblical description, frequently situated on elevated terrain to symbolize proximity to the divine. These altars show signs of regular use, with remnants of wood and animal bones confirming sacrificial activity. The substitution ritual depicted in Genesis fits within a broader Bronze Age pattern where animals represented humans and offerings, a practice widespread across cultures of the time. The biblical narrative preserves these details with striking realism, suggesting a grounding in lived religious practice. The physical setting of these altars on elevated ground further reinforces the ancient conception of approaching the divine. Mountains were viewed as sacred spaces where heaven and earth intersected, making the location of Abraham's test both symbolically and theologically significant. This spatial symbolism helps deepen our understanding of the story's emphasis on communion with God through sacrifice. The ram's symbolism is rich and multifaceted. In Bronze Age iconography, rams commonly symbolize strength, virility, and divine favor. Their role in ritual was deliberate, conveying messages of life, provision, and blessing. Excavations at Tel Megiddo and Hazor reveal sacrificial installations containing the bones of sheep and goats, underscoring the significance of these animals in covenant rituals. The thicket where the ram is caught carries symbolic weight as well, often interpreted as a sign of divine providence, nature itself intervening on Abraham's behalf. This substitution also reflects an important legal principle from the ancient Near East. The guilty party could be pardoned through the offering of a substitute, a concept found in Hittite laws and Mesopotamian contracts. Moreover, the story anticipates Israel's later sacrificial system, which is fundamentally rooted in the principle of substitutionary atonement. This theological continuity connects Abraham's test directly to the broader biblical narrative. The enduring power of the story lies in its tension between human responsibility and divine mercy. It portrays faith as something both tested and rewarded, a theme deeply embedded in ancient and modern faith traditions alike. This dual emphasis on justice and mercy illustrates a distinctive biblical worldview where law and grace coexist. The ram substitution offers a visual and theological metaphor for divine forgiveness, shaping later Israelite rituals and informing Christian understandings of atonement. Such a layered meaning enriches the narrative's resonance across centuries. Contextual proof: Genesis 22 unfolds at a pivotal moment in Abraham's life, reaffirming God's covenant and promises through a profoundly personal and dramatic test. Far from merely assessing Abraham, the narrative reveals critical aspects of God's character, highlighting divine mercy, justice, and faithfulness. Pause for a moment and consider this. Why would such a story be preserved with such intricate detail and nuance, unless it was rooted in real memory and experience? Why does the narrative emphasize substitution rather than sacrifice itself? Why is the event linked to a specific mountain destined to become the central place of Israelite worship? The answers point to a faith tradition deeply grounded in history and theology, not mere myth or allegory. The story's uniqueness among ancient Near Eastern accounts further underscores its authenticity and lasting significance. This historicity is reinforced by the story's transmission and preservation over generations. Oral traditions in the ancient world often embellish tales, yet the careful detail in Genesis 22 suggests a deliberate attempt to maintain accuracy. The story's continued retelling reveals its profound importance in shaping Israel's identity and theological outlook. The later identification of Mount Moriah as the Temple Mount imbues the story with profound theological depth. Connecting Abraham's test directly to the heart of Israel's worship and covenant identity, this geographic anchor enhances the narrative's historicity and symbolic power. The test functions as a rite of passage, marking Abraham's transition from promise recipient to covenant enforcer. It embodies the ultimate trust required to inherit God's blessings and fulfill divine promises. While ancient cultures often employed such tests to signify social and religious status, Genesis transforms this motif into a narrative centered on faith. Ethically, the story anticipates later biblical laws forbidding human sacrifice, as found in Deuteronomy 12:31. By sparing Isaac, the narrative explicitly repudiates surrounding pagan customs and distinguishes Israel's God as merciful and just. Finally, the narrative's complexity, blending human emotion, divine command, and providential intervention, reflects a sophisticated theological reflection rooted in lived experience rather than myth. It remains a powerful testament to faith's demands and God's grace. The psychological realism embedded in Abraham's response to the test also deepens the narrative's power. It captures a moment of profound tension between human vulnerability and divine command that invites empathy and reflection. This complexity resonates with believers across generations, emphasizing that faith is not simplistic, but a courageous journey marked by trust amidst uncertainty. Conclusion: here is the crucial detail we've promised. The ram caught in the thicket symbolizes substitutionary sacrifice, a legal and theological concept prevalent throughout Bronze Age cultures, but uniquely reinterpreted within Israel's faith tradition. This story is far from a simple myth. It is a foundational event that intricately links faith, obedience, and divine mercy. The testing of Abraham reveals a God who demands trust, yet provides rescue. A profound theme resonating throughout the Bible. The narrative's historicity is bolstered by archaeological parallels and cultural context, challenging skeptics to look beyond surface-level criticisms and appreciate the depth and authenticity of Abraham's journey. Ultimately, this story serves as a timeless reminder of the relationship between divine justice and mercy, calling believers to a faith that embraces both obedience and hope. It is a narrative that continues to inspire, challenge, and transform, bridging ancient history and modern faith. To ensure full transparency, please note that this video uses AI-generated visuals to bring history to life. If you found this deep dive into Abraham's test compelling, remember this: Faith and Facts is dedicated to systematically dismantling skepticism by demonstrating that the Bible is the most archaeologically confirmed book in human history. To explore the full scope of evidence, be sure to watch our comprehensive documentary compilation, Abraham, Journey to the Unknown Land, Archaeology, Memory, and the Birth of Biblical History, where we weave together all the proofs discussed across our series. If you want to support this important work, please hit the like button, subscribe for weekly updates on biblical evidence, and share this video with one skeptic you know. After all, some tests shape the destiny of nations. We appreciate your engagement and support as we continue to uncover and share the remarkable historical foundations of biblical faith. Together, we can foster a deeper understanding of Scripture's truth and inspire confidence in its timeless message.